When you look at your life, it's easy to see problems. Maybe it's a health struggle. Maybe it's financial stress. Maybe it's a broken relationship. Or maybe it's just the weight of discouragement that you carry every day. Problems have a way of making themselves feel permanent. They shout in your ear, "This is the way it will always be. You'll never get out of this. You'll never rise above this." But I want to remind you today, your problems are temporary, but God's purpose is eternal. Every problem has an expiration date. They may feel heavy, but they won't last forever. God, however, is writing a story that stretches beyond the moment you're in right now. His purpose is not tied to your pain. His purpose weaves through it, around it, and even uses it. You may think your problems disqualify you from His plan, but in reality, they are often the very things He uses to prepare you, to strengthen you, and to build a testimony in your life. Think about this. The challenges you face today will one day be stories you tell tomorrow. The very things that make you want to quit will one day become the evidence of God's faithfulness in your life. You will look back and realize that the mountain you thought would crush you actually made you stronger. The storm you thought would drown you actually pushed you closer to God. God's purpose is bigger than your problems. Your problems are temporary obstacles, but His plan is an eternal pathway. When you anchor your life to His purpose, you can stand in the middle of a storm with peace in your heart. When you remember that His purpose never ends, you stop giving your problems more power than they deserve. So don't let your problems define you. Don't let them rob you of joy. Don't let them make you doubt God's hand in your life. His purpose is still alive, still active. It's still active and still unfolding. You may not understand how all the pieces fit together right now, but one day you will see the bigger picture. Until then, trust this: God's purpose will outlast your problems every single time. When you look at the problems in your life, they can feel enormous, overwhelming, and unshakable. They seem like they are here to stay, like they are carved into the very foundation of your story. Problems can appear permanent because of the way they grip your heart, the way they dominate your thoughts, and the way they seem to cloud your vision of the future. Yet the truth is that problems are temporary, but God's purpose is eternal. That is not just a hopeful phrase. It is a reality that changes the way you face life. Every hardship, every season of struggle, every setback has an expiration date. They are passing through your life. They are not meant to stay forever. God's purpose, on the other hand, is something that stretches from eternity past into eternity future. His plan does not stop because of your situation. His calling on your life does not disappear because of your pain. His purpose is steady, unchanging, and eternal. It is so easy to become consumed by problems when you forget the bigger picture. Think about how a storm looks when you are standing in the middle of it. All you can see is the wind, the rain, the darkness. But if you were to rise above the clouds, you would discover the sun is still shining, completely unaffected by the storm below. In the same way, God's purpose is like the sun, always shining, always steady, always there. Your problems are like the storm, loud, frightening, disruptive, but temporary. If you anchor your heart to the storm, you will live in fear. If you anchor your heart to the sun, you will find peace knowing the storm will pass. When you understand that problems are temporary, you stop giving them ultimate power in your life. Yes, they are real. Yes, they hurt. Yes, they can weigh heavily on your heart, but they are not the final word. Problems come and go, but God's purpose remains unchanged. He has written your story with eternity in mind. That means what you are facing today is not the full picture. It is just a single chapter in a much larger book. And when you are tempted to think that the chapter you are in is the end, remind yourself that the author is still writing. His purpose will not be cut short because of a problem. Sometimes we confuse problems with permanence because they last longer than we expect. You may have carried a struggle for years and it feels endless. But what lasts a long time in human eyes is still temporary in the light of eternity. Your struggles may mark a season, but they will not mark forever. God's purpose does not operate on your timetable. He is not limited by deadlines, delays, or detours. He is eternal, and his purpose will continue even when your problems seem to linger. That is why you can face them with courage. You know they cannot outlast what God has planned for you. Think about the countless people who went through great struggles in history. Their lives remind us that problems are not permanent roadblocks. Ugh. They are temporary challenges that ultimately serve a higher plan. A problem may last for a season, but God's purpose stretches into generations. What He is doing in your life is not just for today. It is for tomorrow, for the people around you, and for the legacy you will leave. You will leave. When you see your problems in that light, you recognize how small they are compared to the greatness of His plan. So when your heart feels crushed under the weight of your problems, lift your perspective higher. Remind yourself that the problems you face are temporary, fleeting moments in the grand story of God's purpose. They do not have the power to rewrite His plan. They cannot erase His promises. They cannot cancel His love. Problems are temporary, but God's purpose is eternal. His plan for your life was established before the foundation of the world, and nothing you face today has the strength to overturn what He has already set in motion. God uses problems as preparation, even when we cannot see it in the moment. Every challenge that rises in your life has the potential to shape you into the person you were created to be. What often feels like a setback is actually a setup for something greater. We tend to look at our struggles as interruptions to our plans, but from God's perspective, they are building blocks for His purpose. The process may feel uncomfortable, but it is necessary because without resistance, there is no growth. Without pressure, there is no strength. And without testing, there is no maturity. When you face difficulties, it is easy to ask why they are happening, but a better question is how they are shaping you. Every difficulty is an opportunity for character to develop. Patience is formed when you are forced to wait. Endurance grows when you are stretched beyond what you thought you could handle. Compassion is deepened when you experience pain and then learn to understand the pain of others. Problems become classrooms, and every season of struggle becomes a lesson. You might not enjoy being in that classroom, but you are being taught truths that no book or lecture could give you. Look at how challenges prepare you for responsibilities that lie ahead. A person who has never carried weight will never build strength. In the same way, someone who has never walked through problems will not be ready for the purpose that requires resilience and wisdom. God often trains you in private battles before entrusting you with public victories. The problems you encounter today may seem pointless, but tomorrow you will realize they gave you the tools you need for what He is calling you to do. It is also true that problems reveal what is inside of us. When everything is going smoothly, it is easy to speak of faith and hope. But when life is falling apart, the core of who you are is revealed. Problems bring out both weakness and strength, and once they are revealed, God can refine them. Think of a refiner's fire where precious metal is heated until the impurities rise to the surface. That is what struggles do for the soul. They expose what needs to be removed and reveal the strength that has been hidden. Without the fire, the metal would never shine, and without problems, your character would never be purified. Preparation through problems is not about punishment, but about positioning. Every difficulty positions you closer to the kind of person who can fulfill a greater calling. If life were easy and smooth, you would remain untested and unshaped. The most impactful lives are often the ones that have walked through the hardest roads because they learned lessons in the valleys that could never be learned on the mountaintops. God does not waste pain. He transforms it into preparation for a purpose bigger than you can imagine. When you think of your own journey, remember the moments where a problem you once hated later became a turning point. Maybe it was a disappointment that redirected you to something better. Maybe it was a closed door that led to a greater opportunity. Maybe it was a loss that birthed new compassion in you. At the time, it felt like nothing more than pain, but looking back, you can see how it prepared you. That pattern is evidence that what you are facing right now is not wasted either. God does not allow problems to enter your life without using them to shape your destiny. The preparation is not always visible, and you may not recognize it until years later, but it is happening even now. The very challenges that seem to hold you back are often shaping you for what He has ahead. What you see as resistance, He sees as training. What you view as an obstacle, He views as equipment. What you call a burden, He calls preparation. Your problems do not define you because your identity is not rooted in the circumstances you face, but in the one who created you with purpose. Too often, people allow struggles, failures, or hardships to stamp labels onto their hearts. They begin to see themselves through the lens of what went wrong rather than through the lens of who they were made to be. A season of financial strain becomes an identity of being a failure. A broken relationship becomes an identity of being unlovable. A mistake from the past becomes an identity of being permanently flawed. But problems are events, not identities. They are temporary conditions, not eternal truths. You are more than what you are going through, and your value does not shrink when your life is shaken by difficulties. So, when you define yourself by problems, you give them more power than they deserve. A problem can influence your emotions, but it should never dictate your worth. Think about how quickly people label themselves by what they are facing. I'm depressed, I'm broke, I'm a failure, I'm weak. Failure, I'm weak. These words become chains because they merge identity with circumstance. But you were never meant to be defined by temporary struggles. You were designed with eternal purpose, and no problem has the authority to rewrite what God has spoken over your life. Identity is something deeper, something unshakable. It is anchored in the fact that you are created intentionally, loved unconditionally, and purposed eternally. Problems can test you, but they cannot erase the truth of who you are. They might press you on every side, but they cannot destroy the core of your identity. If you believe your problems define you, you will live in defeat. But when you remember that your identity is separate from your struggles, you gain the strength to rise above them. Consider how often people allow past failures to define their future. A person makes a mistake, and instead of seeing it as a single moment, they take it on as their name. They walk around carrying shame that whispers, "This is who you are now." Yet a failure is not a definition, it is an event. Problems are not meant to be name tags. They are meant to be challenges that refine you. Your worth is not diminished because you walk through something hard. In fact, sometimes it is the very opposite. Your value is displayed in how you endure, in how you keep going, in how you refuse to let a problem write your story. It is also important to realize that people around you may try to define you by your problems. Society has a way of labeling those who struggle, and if you are not careful, you will internalize those labels. But human opinions do not carry the weight of eternal truth. You may be underestimated by others, but you are not unknown by God. You may be dismissed because of what you went through, but you are not discarded. The problem in front of you may change how others see you, but it does not change how God sees you. His view of you has always been based on who He created you to be, not on the challenges you face in the moment. Problems can become opportunities to prove to yourself that they are not your identity. When you rise above something that tried to break you, you demonstrate to your own heart that you are stronger than what you thought. Every time you choose not to be defined by your problem, you grow in resilience. Every time you remind yourself that you are more than your pain, you build confidence. Identity is forged when you refuse to let the fire consume you, and instead, let it refine. When you are weighed down by difficulties, remind yourself of this truth. You are not the sum total of your struggles. You are not the mistakes you have made, the battles you are fighting, or the fears you are carrying. Those are parts of your journey, but they are not the whole picture. Problems may describe a chapter of your life, but they do not describe the entire book. They may shape you, but they cannot define you. Your problems do not have the authority to rename what God has already named, and His word over your life is greater than any struggle you face. God's purpose weaves through your pain in ways you cannot always see at first. Pain has a way of blinding you to hope. When you are hurting, your vision narrows, and all you can focus on is the struggle in front of you. It feels unfair, it feels heavy, and it makes you wonder if there is any meaning at all in what you are going through. Yet, behind the scenes, there is a greater design being worked out. What feels like random suffering is often part of a tapestry that is still being woven. Each thread of pain, each knot of difficulty, and each stretch of heartache becomes part of a bigger picture that only comes into view with time. There are seasons where you may question why you had to walk through something so hard. You might feel as if your pain is wasted or that it has stolen too much from your life. But nothing is wasted when it is placed in the hands of God. Every tear, every heartbreak, every disappointment becomes material He uses in building your story. The same pain that feels unbearable today may become the very thing that equips you to help someone tomorrow. Pain sensitizes you to the struggles of others, deepens your compassion, and gives you a testimony that carries weight. People listen differently to someone who has walked through the fire and lived to tell about it. It is also true that pain has the power to strip away illusions and force you to confront what really matters. When life is easy, it is tempting to live superficially, to be distracted by things that do not last. But pain has a way of digging into your soul and reminding you of eternal truths. It shows you what is unshakable when everything else is shaking. It forces you to lean on strength beyond yourself. In this way, pain becomes a teacher. The lessons it teaches are not ones you would have chosen, but they are lessons that form the foundation for the rest of your life. Pain often feels like a detour, but it can actually be the very road that leads you to your purpose. Sometimes the door you thought would open never does, and that loss breaks your heart. But years later, you look back and see how that closed door protected you or redirected you to something better. Sometimes the person you thought you could never live without leaves, and you wonder how you will ever heal. But later, you realize that absence created space for growth and for people who were meant to walk alongside you in the future. Pain does not cancel purpose. It often directs you to it. There are countless stories of individuals whose greatest pain became the seed of their greatest calling. The person who battled sickness becomes a healer of others. The one who walked through poverty becomes a voice for justice. The one who endured rejection becomes a builder of community. Pain does not have to be the end. It can be the beginning of a mission that reaches far beyond your own life. That is how God weaves purpose through pain, by transforming what was meant to harm you into something that blesses others. In your own life, the moments of pain you are carrying may feel like random fragments. They feel disconnected, like broken pieces scattered on the ground. But God sees the full mosaic. He takes those sharp, painful edges and places them into the design in such a way that they contribute to beauty you never thought possible. What you call broken, He calls part of the masterpiece. What you call meaningless, He calls preparation. What you call loss, He calls transformation. Though you may not see it clearly now, there will come a day when you look back and realize that your pain was not wasted. It changed you. It grew you. It positioned you for things you could not have reached otherwise. You may not thank the pain, but you will thank the God who carried you through it and wove purpose into every moment. Pain may shout loudly, but purpose speaks more deeply, and in time you will recognize that it was always there, weaving through even the hardest chapters of your story. Faith in God's purpose brings peace in problems because it shifts your focus from what is happening around you to what is unshakable and eternal. When storms come into your life, they create confusion, fear, and uncertainty. Problems have a way of making you feel as though everything is out of control. But when you trust that God has a purpose that cannot be shaken, You begin to experience a peace that is not tied to circumstances. It is a peace that comes from knowing that even though you do not control the outcome, you are held by the one who does. Faith is not about ignoring reality. It does not mean you pretend your problems don't exist. Faith is choosing to believe that problems do not have the final word. It is believing that God is still working, even when you cannot see the evidence. Problems may cloud your vision, but faith reminds you of what is true beyond the clouds. It says, yes, I see the storm, but I also know the sun still shines above it. This perspective changes how you carry yourself in hard times. Instead of being consumed by fear, you can walk with calm assurance because your trust is anchored in something eternal. When you put faith in God's purpose, you begin to recognize that He can bring good out of even the worst situations. What others intended for harm, He can use for good. What looks like defeat can become the seed of victory. Problems that seem like they will break you can actually shape you into a stronger person. Peace comes when you stop asking a why is this happening to me? And start believing a how might this be used for a greater purpose. That shift lifts the weight off your shoulders because you realize you don't have to have all the answers. You simply need to trust the one who does. Faith also allows you to rest even when life feels uncertain. There are moments when no solution is in sight and the waiting feels unbearable. In those moments, anxiety tries to take over. But when your heart is rooted in the belief that God's purpose will outlast your problems, you find rest in the waiting. You stop striving to control what you cannot control, and you place it in His hands. That surrender is not weakness. It is strength because it connects you to the deepest source of peace you can ever know. Peace in problems doesn't mean you stop feeling the pain or the weight of challenges. It means that underneath the pain, there is a steady confidence that you are not abandoned. It is like a river running beneath the surface of a dry land. On the outside, everything looks barren, but beneath it all, there is life flowing. Faith in God's purpose creates that hidden river of peace. Even when things appear bleak, there is still something inside you that whispers hope and keeps you moving forward. This kind of peace becomes a testimony to others. People notice when you face problems without falling apart. They notice when you carry yourself with calmness while everything around you is chaotic. Your faith becomes a light that points others to hope. They begin to see that the peace you carry is not natural, it is supernatural. And in seeing that, they are drawn to the God who sustains you. Your problems may be the stage, but your peace becomes the message. It is important to remember that peace is not the absence of problems, but the presence of trust. Life will never be free of struggles. There will always be challenges to face, mountains to climb, and valleys to walk through. But peace is possible in every season when you know that God's purpose is unshakable. Problems lose their ability to control you when you trust in His plan. Fear loses its grip when you believe that His purpose is greater. Worry loses its weight when you rest in the assurance that His hand is guiding your story. So as you face the problems in front of you, remember this: they are not the end of the story. They are chapters, but not the conclusion. The purpose of God will outlast every storm, every trial, and every obstacle. And when you place your faith in that purpose, you will find peace that carries you through it all. Problems may surround you, but peace will sustain you because you know that God's plan is still unfolding and His purpose will stand forever.